A mother of 5 vanished in broad daylight from inside her own home. No body, no goodbye, just a few streaks of blood hastily wiped from the garage. This is the story of Jennifer Dulos, but it's not like other missing person cases, because this time, there was no body, only black garbage bags thrown out in the night, in front of a public surveillance camera. Picture an ordinary morning in one of the wealthiest towns in America. A mother had just dropped off her children off at school, driving home around 8. A packed schedule was waiting for her, but she would never make it to a single appointment. Because what happened inside of that house and what followed on the dark city street would become one of the most haunting cases in Connecticut. If you watch this video till the end, you'll understand the darker side of human nature, and you'll learn the warning signs of a toxic relationship, the kind no one should ever ignore. Because this story doesn't begin with a scream. It begins with a house that was too clean and dozens of garbage bags no one was allowed to open. At 8:05 in the morning, a security camera caught her car returning home. It was the last image of her alive. May 24th, 2019, in New Canaan, Connecticut, one of the wealthiest, most secluded, and safest towns in America, a place where people believed evil could never reach. At 7:58 that morning, Jennifer Dulos drove her car, dropping off 5 children at school, a familiar sight of any ordinary morning. This was a completely normal day. A mother, 5 children, a packed schedule. She had 2 important appointments in New York that day, one at 11, another one at 1 in the afternoon. But no one knew she would never make it to either. By 11:30, the family's nanny walked into the house to begin her shift. The moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong in the air. Jennifer's Range Rover still sat in the garage, even though according to plan, she was supposed to use it to drive to New York. On the kitchen counter, her purse, holding her wallet and IDs, sat untouched. For a mother who always carried her things to care for her 5 children, this was unusual to the point of chilling. Then the nanny noticed one small detail. 10 rolls of paper towels, bought just the day before, vanished without a trace. Sometimes tragedy doesn't arrive with a loud sound. It arrives in silence, in the safest place, on the most ordinary morning, and it leaves behind small clues so small they are almost invisible. When the police finally reached the house, they walked into a scene that had been carefully cleaned, but under forensic light, the truth began to surface. To the naked eye, the garage was spotless, but when the police turned off the lights and switched on their forensic equipment, the whole room lit up. After hours of calling and texting Jennifer and getting only silence, the nanny and 2 of her friends called the police at 7 in the evening. The police came right away. Just 10 minutes later, they found Jennifer's car. It had been abandoned alone near Waveney Park, a wooded area a few miles from home. The car was completely empty. But the focus was the house. When they sealed it off and searched, investigators faced a scene that appeared to have been carefully cleaned. At first glance, everything looked fairly tidy, no obvious traces. But no one knew that this very cleanliness was the most suspicious thing of all. The expert used specialized chemicals and high-intensity lights, and what had been hidden quickly came into view. Blood splatter appeared on the garage floor, on the garage door, on several sections of the surrounding walls. This was the sign of a violent attack that someone had tried to wipe away. Then, at the faucet on the kitchen sink, forensic experts found the most important thing: a biological mixture containing Jennifer's blood mixed with the DNA of her estranged husband, Fotis Dulos. Blood can be wiped away from a surface, but it rarely disappears completely. It just waits for the right kind of light to appear and tell what happened. Now, the scene raised a difficult question. Why would someone clean the garage so meticulously, but leave the car out in the open area like a park, full of traces not yet erased? To answer that, we have to understand who Jennifer was and what she was afraid of. 2 years before she vanished, Jennifer wrote a sentence into a court filing, a sentence that reads like a prophecy. Jennifer Farber Dulos was born in 1968 into a family of New York's financial elite. Her father was a prominent investment banker and philanthropist. Jennifer herself was a highly educated woman. She graduated from Brown University and earned a master's degree in writing. She was passionate about writing, and she had been a sharp blogger who focused on family and raising children. In 2004, she married Fotis Dulos, a Greek-born real estate developer, charming and deeply ambitious. Together they had 5 children, including 2 sets of twins and a youngest child. From the outside, it was a perfect family. Wealthy, beautiful, living in a magnificent home. But no one knew that behind that facade was a suffocating marriage. In 2017, Jennifer discovered Fotis was having an affair with a woman named Michelle Troconis. When confronted, Fotis showed no remorse. According to the record, he pushed back with pressure of his own. And in an effort to protect herself and her children, Jennifer secretly planned to leave. She rented her own home in New Canaan. She hired security. She filed for divorce. In her filing to the court, she wrote a line that chills anyone who reads it. "I know he will try to retaliate by trying to harm me in some way." She also alleged that Fotis had once threatened to kidnap the children to Greece. Sometimes a victim knows the danger is coming. They say it out loud. They write it down. But the system doesn't always protect them in time. When the police read these lines, their attention turned to one person, the estranged husband. The one who claimed that all day long, he was at his own home 70 miles from the scene. Fotis said he was home all day, but the phone in his pocket told a different story. During initial questioning, Fotis Dulos gave his alibi. He insisted he'd spent the entire day around his own home in Farmington, a place 70 miles, about 112 kilometers from the scene in New Canaan. An alibi that sounded solid. If he was 70 miles away, how could he be involved? But the police didn't rely on his statement alone. They used geofencing, basically analyzing data from cell phone towers. A person's phone, no matter what they say, always leaves behind their digital footprint. And no one knew that Fotis' own phone was about to betray him. The analysis revealed something unusual. On the evening of May 24th, the phones of Fotis and his girlfriend Michelle had traveled to the Albany Avenue area of the city of Hartford, starting around 10 past 7 in the evening. This was the very evening Jennifer vanished. So what were the two of them doing on a city avenue at exactly that time? In this age, people can lie with words, but the phone in their pocket always records the truth, one step at a time, unable to hide a thing. Hartford police immediately pulled surveillance footage from stores and intersections along Albany Avenue, and what they saw on screen would become the central image of the entire case. On the camera screen, a black pickup truck stopped at one trash can after another, and a man kept throwing down black bags. When the police reviewed the footage along Albany Avenue, a sequence of suspicious actions emerged. In the video, a black Ford Raptor moved slowly through several blocks. The truck was registered to Fotis Dulos' construction company. The driver's build matched Fotis himself. He kept stopping the truck at various public trash cans, then throwing down black bags. The passenger was a woman whose appearance matched Michelle Troconis. At one point, she opened the car door, leaned out, and poured something into the sidewalk. No one knew that this was not simply taking out the trash. To the investigators, this was a cover-up, an effort to scatter and erase evidence, recorded second by second on a public camera. And what was inside those black bags? The police immediately launched an emergency operation. They raced along Albany Avenue, recovering the garbage bags before the sanitation trucks could collect them. A killer sometimes thinks the dark will hide everything. But in the modern America, there's always a lens recording, quietly. When those bags were opened in the lab, they turned the blurry camera images into undeniable evidence. In total, the police recovered 22 blood-stained items. Inside those black garbage bags was the answer to the question of where Jennifer was, and it was colder than anyone imagined. When the garbage bags were taken to the forensic lab, the analysts turned the camera footage into a chain of direct evidence. Inside, technicians found a gray t-shirt and a bra with a torn strap. Both were stained with Jennifer Dulos' blood. But it wasn't just the victim's clothing. The bags also held other items: plastic zip ties, rubber gloves, and blood-soaked sponges. These were the traces of a deliberate process: subdue, then clean, then dispose. But the decisive part lay in the forensic traces left on those very items. On the strips of black tape used to seal the garbage bags, experts recovered Fotis' fingerprints. Inside the used rubber gloves, they found his DNA. And on the opening of at least one bag, they isolated a small amount of DNA matching Michelle Troconis. This showed she didn't just sit in the truck, but she may have directly handled the bags of evidence. A person can throw away evidence, but the very act of throwing it away leaves behind new traces. Sometimes the effort to hide a crime creates even more evidence. With that in hand, the police arrested Fotis and Michelle. But because no body had been found, they could only charge the two with tampering with evidence, and the investigation still had one major link left unsolved. There was a problem that puzzled the police. Fotis' truck never appeared on any camera pointing towards Jennifer's house. So how did the killer get there? As they reviewed the footage, the police found a major contradiction. Fotis' black Ford Raptor was not on any of the cameras leading towards New Canaan. If he really went to Jennifer's house, how did he travel there without being caught on camera? The answer lay in another vehicle, a red, older model Toyota Tacoma pickup, owned by an architect who worked for Fotis' company. Through investigation, the police learned that on May 24th, Fotis had borrowed this Tacoma, saying he had personal business to handle. But no one knew that what Fotis did with the truck afterward was the most suspicious part of all. Just a few days after Jennifer vanished, Fotis took the truck to a professional detailing shop, had it washed and vacuumed thoroughly, without asking the owner's permission. And it didn't stop there. He angrily pressured the architect to remove the truck's rear seat, throw it away, and replace it with a seat from another vehicle. But the architect grew suspicious. Instead of throwing away the old seat, he secretly kept it, and later handed it over intact to the police. Sometimes justice is saved by an ordinary person, someone who chooses to trust their instincts and quietly does the right thing even before they fully understand why. And the test results on that seat were about to become a crucial link in the entire case. To understand why a man could do this, we have to look at his bank account. It was nearly empty. The tests on the Tacoma's old seat came back positive for blood, and the lab confirmed that the blood on the passenger seat cushion contained Jennifer Dulos' DNA. This was the link proving she had been transported in this very truck. But there was still a bigger question. Why? Why would a man do this to the mother of his own 5 children? When they dug into Fotis' business, the police found the answer. Fotis' construction business, glamorous on the outside, was in truth a sandcastle. It had been built with enormous loans from his own in-laws, but no one knew that the sandcastle was collapsing. When Jennifer's father died, her mother began demanding repayment of a $2.5 million debt. Fotis was pushed to the brink of total bankruptcy, and from there, a chilling motive emerged. The police believed Fotis had calculated. If he could get rid of Jennifer, the divorce would end. The debt lawsuit would lose a key witness. And more than that, he could gain access to a trust fund worth millions, a fund that Jennifer's father had specifically set up for his 5 grandchildren. The 3 biggest problems of his life all would vanish if Jennifer vanished. Sometimes the motive for a crime isn't hatred nor passion, it's simply money. In the desperation of a man about to lose everything. With motive and evidence in hand, the police tightened the net. But Fotis remained arrogant, defiant before the public, until one January morning when he failed to appear in court. That morning, Fotis Dulos was ordered to appear in court. He didn't come. When the police went to his house, they looked through the garage door and saw a car with its engine running. From the moment he was arrested, Fotis' attitude was always one of arrogance. He appeared before the media, repeatedly declaring his innocence. He challenged the police to produce evidence of a murder when there wasn't even a body. But that confidence collapsed at the end of January 2020. The court called for a review of Fotis's bail. That meant he could be sent back to a cell immediately. But on the morning of the emergency hearing, Fotis didn't show up. Acting on the court's request, the police went to his home in Farmington to check on him. They looked through the glass on the garage door, and inside, Fotis's car was running. The garage door was sealed shut. The police immediately broke in. Inside the thick, toxic haze, they found Fotis slumped over the driver's seat. Rescuers tried to resuscitate him, airlifted him to the hospital, but the brain damage from the gas poisoning was too severe. 2 days later, Fotis Dulos took his final breath. Beside him, the police found a suicide note. In it, he wrote that if people were reading these words, he was already gone. He refused to spend even 1 hour in prison for something he insisted he did not do. With Fotis's death, every secret about where Jennifer lay was buried along with him. Sometimes, a perpetrator chooses to take that truth to the grave as a final act of control, cruel to those left behind. But justice hadn't stopped because there were others who had been beside Fotis in those days, and one of them was about to stand trial. How do you convict someone of murder when the victim's body has never been found? That's the question an entire trial had to answer. After Fotis's death, the pursuit of justice continued. In 2024, the criminal trial of Michelle Troconis officially opened in Stanford. The trial lasted 27 days, with the participation of numerous forensic experts, witnesses, and state investigators. The defense tried to argue that Michelle knew nothing about what was inside the garbage bags, that she simply followed Fotis as an innocent girlfriend, deceived and manipulated by a controlling man. But no one knew that the jury would see things a different way. They rejected these arguments entirely. In March of 2024, the jury declared Michelle Troconis guilty on all 6 charges she faced, including conspiracy to commit murder, along with tampering evidence and hindering prosecution. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison, to be suspended after serving 14 and a half years, along with 5 years of probation. At the sentencing, Jennifer's children were allowed to speak. They gave tearful testimony, facing the woman they believed had helped cover up their mother's death. The family's nanny, the first to walk into the empty house that day, asked one question straight at Michelle. Where is she, Michelle? A trial can deliver a verdict, but it doesn't always deliver an answer. And for a family, not knowing where their loved one lies is a pain that never closes. Michelle still insists she is innocent and has filed an appeal. But whatever the verdict, the bigger question still hangs in the air. Where is Jennifer Dulos? Jennifer was never found, but her name now is written into the law of an entire state. For years, the police didn't give up. They used excavators, ground-penetrating radar, searched many different locations, but they never found Jennifer. Along with the death of Fotis, the man who took the secret to his grave, the hope of finding her had nearly gone out. In October of 2023, a Connecticut court officially declared Jennifer Dulos deceased, so the family could complete the proceedings and protect the rights of the 5 children, now orphaned of both parents. But no one knew that Jennifer's story would leave behind something greater than a case. In 2021, the Connecticut legislature passed a new law. It was named after her, Jennifer's Law. The law expanded the definition of domestic violence. For the first time, it formally brought the concept of coercive control into criminal law. Under it, behaviors that don't require physical violence are also considered domestic abuse. Isolating a victim from their family, strict control of finances, tracking someone's schedule with technology, threatening to take away custody of children. And most importantly, the new law allows victims to seek an emergency protective order without having to prove physical injury, the very thing Jennifer lacked when she wrote down her fear in a court filing. Don't let the perpetrator's name be what you remember the most about this story. Remember Jennifer Dulos, a mother of 5, a talented writer, a woman who, in her mother's words, only wanted to give and receive love with her children. She was never found, but because of her, other women now have one more shield to protect them. That may be the most powerful legacy a victim can leave behind. So what do you think about this? A truth still buried to this very day? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you think Jennifer's story deserves to be remembered, leave a like, subscribe, so you don't miss the next story.